Yeah, you're very good at it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. For those of you who are joining us, typically we do ask people if you'd like, you can sit at the table with us. We try to do it as a round table meeting and a little more informal than some of our meetings. So if you're a business owner or you represent a business community and you want to sit at the table, please join us and we'll try to squeeze everyone in who wants to. We don't bite, so you can sit up here with us.
And we'll make as much room for people as we can. Anyone else?
Anyone else? You're free to join us, and you're free to come up as you'd like. So I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Standing Business Retention Economic Development Subcommittee. I'm Councilmember Christy Holstidge.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeff Kors.
David Rennie, City Manager.
And push your button. And everyone push your buttons because this is recorded.
Jay Verrata, Director of Community and Economic Development.
Kathy Van Horn, Economic Development Administrator.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and so we have a lot of people in the room, so we'll just start with public comment. So does anyone have any public comment at this time? And it's more informal, so we don't time you, but please be thoughtful of time.
Sure. So just on behalf of Main Street, there was something that is outside of this agenda that we wanted to just bring up for a discussion, and that is funding for new banners for downtown. The banners that you currently see up there that are for downtown, we got those when we also had Tammy Perez Chica. I think it might be 8 years ago or so. And then also the idea also is to change out the hardware on Indian Canyon, because currently the hardware over there makes for a weird size banner. So when you get like the film festival wanting to put up banners, they don't have even the right size for Indian. And so Indian is not able to be part of the downtown in the same way. And so I think that that would be something that's not that hard, and I don't think really expensive to trade out that the hardware on Indian and also funding for banners. That was all. Thank you.
And we can respond since this is somewhat more informal. But after you made that request, we're going to put that on for the budget subcommittee, just so we don't double deliberate on it. But it is on the list for looking at funding for it.
Can I just say, too, that it would be completely acceptable to even do half as many as we have banner posts and do every other banner with that, and then when other events come, they could take those alternating ones, and it could be a real cost savings. I try to use the city's money as if it were my own, and I'm super cheap, so watch out. Thanks.
Thank you. Other public comment? Feel free to come up if you have public comment. Anyone else at the table first? No? You can sit here. Thank you, Daryl.
And just hit the. Oh, sorry. Got it.
My name is Daryl Terrell. I'm from Mobile. Good evening. The way we come back and reduce poverty and unemployment is to explain the local economy through job creation. President Franklin Roosevelt, once said that the best anti-poverty program is a job. I'm here to talk to you about what I did on February 6th of this year at the City Council meeting about a proposed ordinance that would not only expand economic opportunities for all residents, especially those who are economically disadvantaged, but inspire hope in them. Tonight, I would like to submit, as I gave each council member, Kors and Councilman Holstidge and the Economic Director, a copy of the proposal that I submitted into the public record. This proposal is called Hire Palm Springs First. This proposed ordinance would establish a direct pathway connecting your residents to jobs created by development projects with your tax dollars. It will require that a minimum of 50% of jobs in a good faith effort created by the development in public works projects go to your residents. For all projects that receive $100,000 or more in direct or indirect city subsidies, including grants, loans, tax breaks, and deferrals, infrastructure improvements made for the purpose of facilitating or supporting a development project, land sale, or ground lease. The local hire requirement will cover both construction jobs and the long-term retail jobs like office and other jobs created. A portion of the 50% will be targeted for the economic disadvantaged workers, residents who who are low income or who have other problems that makes it hard for them to get a job. This proposed ordinance will create a first source referral system to provide job referrals and the enforcement and compliance of the local hire requirements. Speaking of that, under this proposed ordinance, someone had asked, if after you trying to make a good faith effort, a developer or employer or a contractor or a subcontractor is unable to comply to meet the 50%, what happens then? Well, according what I wrote in there is if they're unable to meet that 50% goal, employment of the qualified individuals from neighboring cities will be counted so that no less than 40% of the workforce is comprised of residents and the residents of the neighboring cities. That's like in Cathedral City, other neighboring cities, you can't find the requirements. But in closing, what I've shared with you tonight, I believe would leverage the buying power of the city to direct jobs to those areas that have been left out. It would strengthen the community, especially the disadvantaged. It would have a direct economic benefit to all of you guys, including employment and indirect sales tax. Finally, it would open a pathway for job opportunities and provide a livable wage with benefits with respect and dignity and strengthen our community for all residents. It would give people hope again that they can get a job for the tax money that they worked so hard for on projects that was created by their. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't usually get a full ordinance written out here, so this looks great and we'll review it. Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good afternoon. Don't worry, I'm not going to read from this whole thing. I just brought it up with me. Laura Clark with Windermere Homes and Estates. And the reason that I am coming before you today is that we were, per ordinance, I should cite so that we have this on record, PSMC 11.72.080, which is a city ordinance regarding signs in the windows. The first thing that I would like to mention in reference to this, first off, we were given a courtesy violation. So we weren't actually cited, but given the violation that we would. First thing that we did was we removed the everything out of the window. I feel it's the right thing to do, and then move forward with figuring out a solution. One of the things that I want to note in stating this is that they are not signs. I think that is the first, I don't know if you want to call it fault or not, of this entire thing, is the fact that we are being cited for a sign ordinance, but listings in a window is our way of merchandising. We are a real estate company. Obviously, we cannot put a house in the window. So this is our only way of showing the merchandise that we have. And I will tell you, since we have taken all of the listings out of the windows, people have thought we're closing down. We've gotten calls from other real estate companies that I work at recruiting from, and they say, well, you're going out of business. We have had people walk in the doors and say, are you a furniture company? Because we have gorgeous furniture. We did a $500,000 remodel, and we put gorgeous displays. I did a lot and made sure that I went through my company to get approved to put really nice, beautiful displays in the windows that looked good, that didn't look trashy, that looked acceptable. And we have a lot of support from the public as well that have even been posting on Palm Springs Politics Group, which is not a group I belong to, on Facebook, but it was brought to my attention that the public is not happy with it either, that it's come down, because now we're a black hole per se in the corner where we were a beautiful office that people wanted to go by. And the bottom line is the city, in my opinion, is tying our hands from not only from our company making money, but when people come to see this beautiful destination city that we live in, they consider purchasing a home here. So where are they going to go? They're going to go to a real estate company and find out what homes are for sale in the area. So I really do believe that we need to take a new look at this ordinance. If it's an exception involved for, say, real estate companies or other companies trying to do business such like this, I think that bottom line, something needs to be looked at. I'm sorry?
No, I can, just to give you a little bit of update, and I saw your email just before I came in. About 2 weeks ago, Jim Franklin had asked me regarding another realtor who got a courtesy warning. And so we asked our city attorney, who's an expert in this, to look at if there are ways to do this. Under Supreme Court precedents, which we went through when we did the sign ordinance, which some of you remember well, we can't treat different types of speech differently. So if we allow more than 6 foot of signage, whether it's your merchandise, it's still a sign in the window. We have to allow that for every business, and it could be anything they want. We can't limit it to merchandise or what they're selling. It could be political. It could be anything they want. So we are expecting something back from the city attorney that we're working with to see what our options are. And as soon as we have that, we're going to share it and figure out what the next steps are.
And I respect and appreciate that, but if I can just say one more thing, and then I'll you know, come back off this. But one thing that, to be quite frank, infuriated me was when my manager, Brian, went down to the city to speak with them directly about this, to come up with a solution. And he was basically told that with this ordinance that we would only be citing people that we get a complaint on. That as a city, that this ordinance, you are not going to go after other businesses that are doing the very same thing. You will only cite somebody who's got a complaint against them. To me, that is not the way you do business, because I'm not going to go complain about my neighbor and the way that they are doing things in their window in order to get my way. So what's good for the goose should be good for the gander, and that is completely unfair and unjust.
And if I could respond to that is misinformation. Actually, they should not have said that. I'll make sure that doesn't happen again. It has to be uniform in every business, and as Joy knows, there comes times where we start to see lots of violations, and we'll notice that, and then we'll do a sweep of everyone to remind them in a courtesy way, please don't do this. And if you continue, then you will get a citation. So we do that sporadically, but we will make sure that it's uniformly across enforced.
And again, my point of this is not about what everybody else is doing. Again, this is more about the fact that I think the ordinance needs to be relooked at and make something that is a win-win for everyone. There's a reason we all pay the exorbitant amount of rent that we're paying on Palm Canyon Drive to get the foot traffic that we get. So anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Other public comment at this time? Hello.
Good evening, staff. I would just like to talk a little bit about, well, my name's Dieter Crawford, Desert Highland Gateway Estates neighborhood vice president. I would just like to say that the Desert Highland Gateway Estates neighborhood would like to work with the city of Palm Springs to create workforce programs with the cannabis industry and COD at James O. Jesse Desert Highland Unity Center, similar to some of the training programs that are being held by COD at Edward Winslow in Desert Hot Springs. I think that would be a good fit for the location. Like the gentleman said earlier, there's a need for jobs in the area, and also there's a lot of cannabis facilities in the neighborhood. And then as well, one more thing on the cannabis. I'm not sure, this is more of a question, but are there incentives at the Accelerator campus for cannabis startups?
Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I know. Oh, do you know?
You know, the incentive is really just the discounted rent that's available through the campus. And I don't know if, Kathy, you have anything to add to that?
I don't think they have any actual cannabis, like growers or anything like that. It would be more related to research and development and more of a medical component. So that would be their goal, is to attract that kind of a startup. And they don't have a monetary incentive, as Jay was alluding to. It's more services and the infrastructure provided to grow a business.
Okay, yeah, that's more of what I was getting at. Maybe we should try to see with the medical focus if we could get some programs there, not cultivation, of course, but, you know, research and development, especially with the Desert Healthcare District sponsorship there.
Thank you. And one idea that this committee has had is bringing some of those speakers to present to us about the Accelerator program and other event, programs, so that we can hear and ask those questions and sort of brainstorm how we can work together. Thank you. Any other public comment? Did anyone else want to, during public comment, announce yourself and say who you are? I know I saw some people wanting to do that. So if you want to do that, feel free, take a mic and say who you're representing, since you all spent your time to get here.
Joy Brown Meredith. I'm president of Main Street, Palm Springs. I also am president of Joy of Life Wellness Center, a dispensary in Palm Springs, and some other stuff.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I will. I'm Jeffrey Bernstein, owner of Destination PSP, and I'm also on the Main Street Board.
And a commission.
And Mr. J. Commissioner.
Oh,
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and Crystal Privacy too. That's right, that one for 32 years. I forgot that one.
Anyone else?
I'm Gregory Goodman from My Little Flower Shop and My Little Bridal Boutique, and also Main Street Board.
Welcome.
I'm not going to miss out.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm Dan Powell, the Executive Director of Desert Business Association, the LGBT Chamber of Commerce for the Valley, and I'm the Administrator for the Arenas District, the new Arenas District merchants.
Thank you. Anyone else at the table or anyone else in the back? Great. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. So we'll move to presentation. So the first item is Small Business Development Center. Hi, welcome. Please join us.
We have,
Presentation chair.
that's it, Joaquin. Joaquin Tijerina.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today with you. Thank you, Kathy, for the invite. My name is Joaquin Tijerina. I'm with the Riverside County Economic Development Agency, the host of the Coachella Valley Small Business Development Center. The Small Business Development Center is housed in the Indio office of the Economic Development Agency. We cover a wide area, everything from Cali Mesa all the way out to the city of Blythe on the Arizona-California border. We are principally funded by the Small Business Administration. They provide funding so that we can provide entrepreneurs with consulting and training to help them start their business, and business owners to provide them with assistance to either expand and grow their business. The services that we provide are at no cost to the business, which makes it a very good proposition for those businesses looking for assistance. We have a total of 5 consultants that work one-on-one, providing consulting services throughout the valley. They can meet clients at their businesses or at other locations, libraries, city areas, and those kinds of things. They help in a variety of areas: operations, management, access to capital, business plans, projections. We specialize in a few areas. We have folks on our team that do food and food related, a couple of folks that do startups. They're great at startups, and a few other of the things that we see here locally in our economy. Partly, we've worked actually with a couple of folks here. These are our flyer that we have, and actually has a business from Palm Springs on there, Javianas. We help them get the funding to open their shop downtown. We're also helped Grand Central Palm Springs open up downtown. Great restaurant. If you haven't been there, you've got to try the waffles with the bacon and gelato. And we also are in the process of having a grand opening for a chiropractic, Severson Chiropractic, that we assisted in purchasing a building in Palm Springs. So we've been a little active on this end. We'd like to be more active, and hopefully in this venue we can get some of our information out and have folks call us. Like I said, we're willing to go to the client's business and assist. Some of the things that we're working on specifically for our training programs are targeted to specialty things. We have a SBDC Eats that does food and food preparation, helping those folks that want to go into either everything from a home kitchen to a brick and mortar restaurant. We have a program called Brick by Brick that we assist those that are wanting to enter into a brick and mortar location, helping them with the leasing terms, looking at what they should be aware of when they're signing leases, and some of the things that are negotiable and those that are not. And we have another program, Webify, that's going to assist folks that want to do online retailing. So we have a variety of things that we do and support, and we're anxious to help in any way we can. I've seen a couple of the things that you guys are doing here in the city. As far as facade improvements and some of the brick and mortar empty storefronts. And I think from a perspective of growing your own in your community, small business development is the way to go. So, any questions?
Can you tell people where they can find more information, and if, I don't know if you have a contact?
Absolutely. There's some contact cards or telephone. We're CoachellaValleySBDC.org. You can find us on the web. You can give us a call. And we'd love to talk to anybody that's interested in starting or growing their business.
Joaquin, do you assist businesses with getting a presence on websites and?
Yeah, so the Webapide program that we're bringing out to the Coachella Valley is designed to do that.
And that includes selling items on websites and such?
Yes, everything from, to the cart.
How about identifying contracts with, for small businesses, identifying contracts with hospitals, government entities, things like that?
There's, certification programs, 8A, and those kinds of things. We have access to our sister network in Inland Empire that focuses on those things. We refer to them, and we've actually helped a few people here locally to do that.
And in terms of business plans, is that it's a core component of the SBDCs, and it helps businesses go to banks and qualify for access funding. They've laid out their plans and directions for what they see. Has that been a big part of the business here in the Coachella Valley for you?
We find that some people need a lot of assistance on the business plans and the projections and the financial statements. So we have folks on our staff that will guide them through the process and help them make sure that their plan is ready and is bankable.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. So our next presentation is Pop-Up Palm Springs. Joy Meredith.
Well, it was actually Jeffrey's idea, so I got to give that to him right off the bat here. So one of the things that Jeffrey has been talking about since coming on the Main Street Board really is the fact that we have very slow business between the Coachella weekends, and a lot of people that we find out from people like Mindy, who owns restaurants, is that a lot of people don't come downtown during that week because they think it's so busy down there that they don't want to bother with it. A lot of local people in particular. And so it was Jeffrey's idea. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm taking the words out of your mouth, but please, whenever you want to say anything, please do. So we've come up with an idea of a way that we could do something that will focus on the local businesses, and based on the way that Main Street is formatted, where we have one representative for each block, the idea is that each of the representatives will bring at least 5 or 6 or more other merchants and restaurants and florists and whatever may be to participate on the Tuesday in between the 2 Coachella weekends in just doing something special that day. It might be a sale, you might bring in an artist, you might have some sort of music, just something that is extra that's worth talking about. So, so that's kind of what we have planned here. It also has a passport element to it where everything would be listed on a printed thing. Then you get a sticker at the different businesses, and then all the businesses that are participating will donate a gift certificate as a prize. So, we might have like 40 or 50 prizes to give away as well at the end of this. So some of the things, so the question might be, so why are we talking about it here? Well, some of the things that we maybe could use help with certainly could be like some printing to solicit the businesses for it. This is not just for Main Street members either. This is for all businesses in downtown and uptown, also on arenas too. So there might be some printing costs, possibly some press releases would be helpful. We are developing a website for this, and maybe even some kind of advertising. I don't really know. And I know what this timing on this is a little bit short, but that's the way this town works most of the time anyways. It's pretty quick like that. So so that's basically what the plan is, and we already have a lot of, I think that we all already have at least the 5 on our blocks, and there will certainly be more.
Great. So, just a question. So, David, can we, one of the things we've talked about is having the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism do some local promotions to bring people from the valley into Palm Springs and bring people out, because that obviously is good for our businesses, good for tax revenue. So, given the tight turnaround, and since they have resources, is that a way we could go? Can we ask them? No?
Well, only because, you know, their budget, their stakeholder group sets out their budget, and they have their budget for the year, and so they haven't done this sort of thing. Now, that's not to say they couldn't if that was council's direction. But about how much are you talking about?
Right.
I don't know, $500?
Yeah, so can't we just do that out of your?
But can I just say that what the Bureau can do is, if it's listed on their calendar, it will go out in their regular email that they already are sending out.
Oh, yeah, that's
And,
easy.
and so, and
we
there
can
is
do
no
that kind of-
extra
and
cost to that.
The city can post it and do that kind of stuff.
But if the subcommittee is talking about $500 for this little
Yes.
initiative, if you give me the direction to do that, I will make
You have
that happen.
Yes.
But I do have a
You
basic
can go up to
question.
1,000.
I just threw
David.
that number out.
A basic question, and forgive me for asking this, but, so there's gonna be merchandise on the sidewalk? Which,
No.
Oh, tell us, because you know that's sort of
No,
like.
this is gonna happen
Ordinance
inside,
violation, but
sorry, no.
Yeah.
Dude, are you kidding me? You think I throw this at you here in this open meeting and not talk to you first privately? No, we're talking about doing things in the businesses, but just adding an extra element. It could be even something like a sale, but just adding something of interest that is really more directed towards bringing the locals downtown. I'm gonna talk about it at 1 PS on
that's
Thursday.
There is a
Yeah,
lot of
sorry,
this
I
which
didn't
happens
explain it that
already.
well.
People bring in artists, or they bring in, West Elm brings in a local vendor, or, you know, and there is some existing things, you know, like the Kimpton is gonna have a pop-up outside of their on the plaza that whole week. So the idea was that there's a lot of these pop-ups that actually do happen during Coachella weekends and a lot of the hotels. In the future, we may say, like, you know, next year, if they could all come together in Palm Springs in the midweek, that would be ideal. But we figured this year was to try something that was easily achievable, that didn't require a lot of special permits, that didn't close the road, that each business could sort of do on their own, but the conglomeration of a whole bunch of things would make it into a bigger event.
Great.
And if I could clarify, so you're talking about some dollars for printing?
Printing, we have PR,
Or press
potentially,
releases.
press release, and potentially an ad in the paper.
Right, okay, and then I think just to be easy, we could just pay directly to the vendor.
Yes.
That would make it easier, and as far as the press release, we can certainly be helpful with that, so I'll ask.
Yeah, we know the time was short, so we weren't making a lot of requests
Yeah.
for it. We were
No,
trying to make it easy, and if it does work into something, then it might be some sort of event we'd like to have monthly, like maybe on the first Friday or whatever. You know, if it ends up that
Good
it's a
idea.
good way to go for this, then we'd like to do it more often.
Terrific.
And,
Well,
and
it's-
see what we do.
It's like, as I stated in our meetings, Columbus, Ohio does gallery hop.
Right.
Yes,
I
they
don't
do.
Flip into those.
Okay.
First Fridays.
It is. I'm from Columbus, and I had a store in
Short
gallery
north.
hop. Yeah.
Village.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm from Ohio, so, and I had a store in Gallery Hop, and you wouldn't believe how many people come.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to make this a monthly thing.
It's great.
But have it more for art, and like we're gonna do a fashion show in our parking lot, and then I have On the Mark's gonna have his vendors out there with food to pass out food and stuff. I just think we have to build some excitement, you know.
It's a
great idea.
It's a great idea.
Public Arts Commission also. I know they're already planning something for that Thursday, but they might also do something on that Tuesday as
Terrific.
well.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other
That's
thing
great.
we can do, I know we have the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, and she sends out releases or event notifications. So maybe we can include that as well if you get a blurb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be
Great.
there Thursday
Okay,
because of the
terrific.
picnic.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward and all your work on that.
That's great.
So the next presentation is Lisa McKay from Buxton. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Well, my creative director, our creative director. Yeah.
Okay, good evening. Again, I'm Lisa McKay. I'm Senior VP for the Buxton Company Community ID Division. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate being invited by Jay and Kathy. They have a proposal in front of them, and we've met a couple of times on different economic development tools to be utilized. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those tonight. Feel free to stop me or ask me questions as we go through this, and I will try to be very respectful of your time. Essentially, background on Buxton, and I've been with the company 14 years. For the last 30, we've worked with more than 4,000 retail, restaurant, and hotel chains, helping them to make site selection decisions, helping them to make marketing decisions. So how do I message my customer through the right media channel? And then merchandise intelligence decisions. So how do the brands that I'm carrying at my store resonate well with that customer in that market? And that is sort of the background of our company. We also work with, for the last 10 years, healthcare providers, about 350 healthcare systems, helping them analyze payer mix, aging population, known presence of children. They have a lot. They're very synergistic with the retail world, and they look at a lot of the same variables. For the last 15 years, we've been a trusted advisor to more than 900 communities, about 350 here in California. Palm Springs is a longtime client of ours. Working with them, sort of a reverse engineer of what we do on the retail side, looking at how do I be proactive in terms of my recruitment strategy, what do I need to understand beyond the limitations of my demographics, my customer profile, what retailers are expanding to Southern California in the next 24 to 36 months, who among them have comparable locations in markets similar to mine, and whether or not they fit the core customer in my market. So in the last 5 years, we've successfully landed over 35 million square feet of retail space in California. That equates to about $6 billion in increased annual sales tax. So we're very proud of that number. There are a lot of ways in which analytic data can be applied, but that's really our core business, is retail recruitment. I know we're going to talk a little bit about grocery tonight because that's been something that you guys have been very interested in, and we can be very focused on grocery or any retail opportunities that you have across the board. In looking at sites evaluated, last year we evaluated around 50,000 sites. Around 7,500 of those became store locations. What that tells you as a community is this is very competitive. They are looking at between 10 and 15 opportunities, and they're selecting one. So you really need to be proactive. I know that you guys already go to deal-making events like ICSC, but that's very important to your story, and really, again, having tools, having analytic data, having data that's updated regularly to market yourself and to help retailers understand your opportunity. Not just recruiting businesses, but also retaining businesses. Buxton is the largest purchaser of consumer spending habits in the nation. At our corporate headquarters, we house more than 250 different data sources. That information updates every 8 weeks, so we're getting rolling real-time snapshots of what's happening in your market in real time. We're also able to separate up to 7 people per household, so it's very granular. It's also very big brother. We are experienced Western partner. We're looking at Equifax files by household, not just an income level, but what is that expendable income? We have exclusivity with Visa that does not exist anywhere else in the world, where we're able to capture transactional level credit card data. We also partner with Amex, MasterCard, and Discover. We geolocate your cell phone, so we understand sort of what you're doing, where you're going, how long you're there. So again, we're really looking across the board at about 7,500 individual variables. Put it down, cash only. But the reality is, and the reason that we're purchasers of this information is our retail partners are not making multi-million-dollar real estate decisions without that market validation. So we have to understand who their customers are, where those customers are coming from, and what is their overall dollars and cents value back to them. So what's being purchased online, and how does that differ from what's being purchased on the ground? Those are all important things. We're also looking at how much retail has changed in the last 5 years, really looking more to smaller footprint concepts, to customer experiences, and really having our finger on the pulse of what's happening in your market and markets like yours. We start by looking at an overall drive time. We don't use radial rings anymore unless the retailer wants to see it that way. But we're looking at an accurate picture of topographical issues, road networks, where your customer density is. We take into account how far people are driving. Consumers think in terms of minutes, not necessarily miles, so we factor in traffic. We look at different times of day, and that gives us sort of an overall primary market trade area for you. We also look at tertiary markets on your behalf. Then we start drilling down not only into demographic information, because what we know based on demographics is not much. Your age, sex, race, income, level of education doesn't tell me whether you're going to walk into Trader Joe's. So we really have to look at your psychographic profile. Psychographics being how you live your life, how you spend your money, and how you consume media. So Steve and Jim are around the same age, income, ethnicity, both married, both have children, but they're very different in terms of how they consume. And we need to understand what those differences are. One's a Whole Foods customer, one works out, one's a Trader Joe's customer, one's Walmart, one's Target, wine drinker, beer drinker, Cheesecake Factory, Chili's. So everything about them is different potentially, although demographically they're very similar. We understand those differences at a household level so that on behalf of Trader Joe's, for example, who's a client, we would be able to say how many of their lookalike customers are in this market and what is their value on a weekly basis. How much money are they actually spending inside those stores? And are there enough customers within a market, if there isn't a Trader Joe's, to warrant an overperforming store, as we factor in things like what's the competition? Is there a cannibalization issue, a store in close proximity, 2.6 miles to be exact. But looking down at the household level and really understanding the differences between those customers. That will lend itself to retail recruitment for you. So being able to really identify your strongest retail matches. You're not limited to our 4,000 clients, although it certainly helps. But we go through a matching profile where we're looking at our proprietary database of about 6,500 retail and restaurant concepts. Those are unique concepts, they're regional concepts, they're national concepts. So being very focused on what their criteria is for expansion. So again, are they even expanding to Southern California in the next 36 months? Do they currently have store locations that overperform in a market similar to your market? So we're not just looking at comparable locations, we're looking at locations that are overperforming in markets similar. And then again, do you have enough customers to warrant that store? We also factor in things like what are their preferences in terms of co-tenants, adjacencies, what are their design standards, what is that specific prototype that's appropriate for your market, so how big should that store be or small? All of those things, that traffic counts, visibility, access, all of those things that really matter to a retailer, being able to do some of that heavy lifting for you so that instead of throwing a dart and hoping that it hits one of 6,500 concepts, that you're very focused on retailers that are very specifically focused on markets like yours. So that you can give that trade area visualization, that you're able to prove that market to them, and this would be sort of a sample of that. So let's just say this is a grocer. Let's just say this is Whole Foods. You would be able to, instead of saying, I have a site at 123 Main and a motivated seller, you would be able to say to Whole Foods, this is the suggested drive time according to Buxton for this specific grocery store. That drive time is suggested based on their store locations and what they're doing in markets similar. So Costco, for example, may have a very different drive time than, say, a Trader Joe's. So that would be customized to that specific retailer. We would then provide a trade area snapshot, which would be your current demographic information and also your 5-year projected growth numbers. The gray list at the bottom would be the number of stores that they have on the ground, preferably in Southern California, in a market just like your market, and each one of those is an overperforming store. So we're then scoring that site based on Whole Foods' actual numbers. So what do they need to see demographically? How many customers, how many lookalike customers need to be in that market to warrant that store? The demographic variables, the competition, the area draw, the accessibility, and then we would project their sales volume. So once we are able to say that's a good fit for you, you have enough customers, we assign value. So we do gravity of decay models. The further away you live from that potential location, the less you're worth. So each customer is assigned a value, and we're able to then show gravity so that they can predict their sales volume. All of those things are very important to them, and I get this question a lot. Well, don't retailers already do this? Sure, they do. Once they are focused on your market, they will do their own due diligence, but are they focused on your market today? And that's the value of being very proactive, is going to these deal-making events, meeting with them personally, contacting their developers and brokers and making sure that they're focused on you and what your opportunity is potentially. We also do exposure, our retail concepts. We have a platform called Scout, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But if you are a city seeking retail, if you're a Buxton client, your information goes to our 4,000 clients. They're able to query you so they can put their criteria into our Scout platform, and it will immediately link them to the contact folks that can help them make those decisions. A little about the retention piece. So we don't want to just be focused on attraction, although I know grocery is an area of focus, but we also want to be very mindful of the eclectic mix of retail that you have on the ground today. So we do support your existing businesses. We want to be able to provide them information that Target uses or that some of our national retailers use to make strategic decisions. So this is a tool that we developed in-house for our local businesses, for our unique businesses, and it uses that same analytic data. The who, where values. So who are their specific customers? Where are those people coming from? And how do they target them? So in this example, that unique retailer was able to draw a radial ring around their store. I show that it has around 3,200 households, but only 1,500 of those are their lookalike customers, so their potential customer base. They're then able to execute on that by sending out a social media, Facebook, or a TripAdvisor saying, visit my store. They're able to grab an email. We do email append, or we do last name if they want to do a direct mail append. And then they're able to track that progress. So what we were able to see here is they reached around 5,700 of those customers. So that was about a 36% increase in their marketing. We also want to allow them to highlight events that are happening. So in this example, they're able to say on Saturday, June 20th, there's a summer food festival coming, send out social media or banner advertisement for that, and that pings their cell phone. So a lot of you probably, when you go into a market, I know I do, if your geolocator is on, you get pings on your cell phone that says, visit here, come here, you get TripAdvisors. This is sort of that same GIS data sourcing. So we do want to support the local businesses. We also have a dedicated team. So we're definitely not two guys in a garage. We're a very large analytic firm. We would assign a 6-person team to you guys. You would have GIS support. You would have Scout support. You would have myself. You would have an account manager, and they help with the outreach. So the retailers that specifically fit provide contact information, help you with the outreach, also for deal-making events, and I believe you guys go to 2. The Southern and the Recon. So there's Vegas, there's a show happening. This is very timely. There's a show happening in May. We would cross-reference the attendee list with your match list at that show so you could meet with those potential grocers that are a good fit. We would allow you to leverage our booth space at that show. We take about 50 people to that conference. We have a massive booth, so you'd be able to use our booth space. And then we also support you at the Southern California Regional ICSC. The other thing that we wanted to talk about that I think is important to incorporate into your strategy is the visitor. I mentioned having exclusivity with Visa. I also mentioned the GIS data. And for you guys, and we've done visitor profiling for you in the past, it was about 73% of your overall transactions came from outside your 2 zip codes. So it's very important to you. It's very important to profile those people, to know who they are, to know where they're coming from, and specifically what they're spending in your market. Because a retailer will not typically make a location decision on a cyclical population of people unless you know who they are, what they look like, and what their overall value is to you. They'll just look at resident and daytime, and that's the end of your story. But we know that's not the end of Palm Springs' story. So really aligning a lot of your businesses with the visitor and their customer preferences. So we're, again, leveraging credit card data, transactional level credit card data. We're looking at what that visitor looks like demographically, what they look like psychographically, their online activity, how often they're visiting, and then again, that cell phone data. So identifying those folks. We wanted to use the cell phone data. We've had Visa for a while, but we were not getting those cash-based purchases, and we weren't getting good events information if it was a free event. So with the cell phone data, we're now able to have both pieces of that story. So very important to you guys.
Could I ask to get
Sure.
cell phone data from all?
AT&T and Verizon. So, like I said, with the credit card data also, we're not going to get 100% of anything. What we're looking for is a significant enough sample set to drive those decisions. And that's really what's important. Instead of doing a survey where we have, like for Santa Monica, they had around 5,000 records where they were on the streets. When we sampled with Visa and the cell phone data, it was like 300 million records or something like that. It was like a crazy amount. So it just gives us a significant enough sample set to help drive those decisions. So again, down to the household level, looking at those visitors, all prospective visitors, and being able to target them, those likely to visit based on who's actually visiting. So I'll just give you a quick application example, because another thing that Kathy, Jay, and I have talked about is that event piece. This is in a sort of an example of the visitor profiling. We were able to look at 72% of their visitors, where they originated from, so where primarily was that spend distribution coming from. 32% coming from Virginia is pretty significant. That would be an area, those would be zip codes or address levels that I would target if I was going to bring them back. We know what their overall percentage of spend is, so we were able to really say what matters and maybe what doesn't matter from a marketing standpoint. We also looked at seasonality for them. So, what was peak season? How did that differ from off-peak season? The overall profile of customer, also how they differ from the resident and the daytime population. And then sort of that subcategory. So we looked at single adult, family household, childless retreat household, and that overall profile. And then we went from marketing mediums. So what were the ways in which they should be marketing to those customers, and what was their propensity or likelihood to respond to an online versus, say, a direct mail campaign. So these are just a couple of case studies. 12 million tourists here. They looked at their workforce profile. They had a lot of commuters. They were able to really understand how that daytime population differed from a day tripper. Tennessee, again, 15 key tourist destinations within the community, and looking at what were those most important. This was an event for Fort Worth where they looked at a concert venue. How far were people willing to drive? How did they differ from folks that were staying there or that were more long-term stay? Specific to a shopping mall, this was in Southern California. They wanted to know the shopping mall and what that regional shopping mall was doing versus what Balboa Village was doing, and how those two things differed. So again, lots of case studies, and here's yours. This was several years ago, but we were able to look at your transactions. We were able to do a lot with that information, and also long term, we have been very successful working with you guys for retail recruitment. So we'd really like to just renew that partnership with you and move forward again. If we're going to be very aggressive on grocery, it's good timing, because that recon show is coming up and there'll be a lot of grocers there willing to have conversations with you guys. Questions?
You want to share?
So many?
Yeah.
Well, and Kathy can explain this better. So we've gone through, we did this before several years. It was
Our 2012, I believe, was our. We were the pilot for the visa.
We were our guinea pig. Yes.
We were the test. So that was amazing, and we actually utilized that data pretty well along with tourism.
And at the time, it was, as we were getting ready to do the whole downtown project, we thought it was important to do this. So obviously, but it's quite expensive. It's about $50,000. It was about 40,000 or so. Then.
It was a little bit more. Actually, our
70 the first time.
Yeah, it was 70 the first time. We did have a little participation, but that was a little bit different, because we had to work with the hotels and a title company to get data, because they didn't have. This was early 2000s. So it's come a long way. I mean, this is just amazing.
Yeah, the pilot we did for free, because really, essentially, we wanted to test the visitor profile and get your feedback. So we worked closely with John and Kathy at the time to say, what are the potential pitfalls? Are you using it? Are you not using it? Do you see its value from a community standpoint? So we did that visitor profile for free.
Do you work with other cities in our region, or Coachella CVB or tourism groups
I do.
here?
Yeah, we have a lot of clients here. Palm Desert is a client. We've done projects for Cathedral City, for Hemet, for Indian Wells. We've got a lot of clients in this area. Our only current client, we're about to start something with Indio also. It's specific to a car dealership, but you guys are maybe similar from a customer standpoint, but you all want very different things. So, you know, you're not necessarily going head to head with each other. I think this is more, you're better regional players than a lot of my partners. You play well together.
Thank you. And then how does the local business access work? So I was trying to follow that along, but I'm sure our local businesses have that question.
So they would be given subscriptions as part of this. So we talked about 25 subscriptions if you need more than that, and it's included in the partnership. So the businesses would have their own unique password, username and password, and they would be allowed to access our analytic platform and draw that radial ring and be able to leverage the data that we have.
Great. Do you have questions?
Questions? No, it's a lot of information, so thank you.
It is.
You got
Yeah,
to a
I'm
lot
sorry.
quickly.
Yeah.
And for folks who haven't been in other meetings, one of the things that led to this is we are looking at how we entice grocery stores in our food desert areas. So that is part of this. But the idea of being able to support our local businesses, tying it in with Uniquely Palm Springs is something, you know, I think we should talk with staff a little bit more and then talk to you and then talk to the stakeholders about and figure out what a package would look like.
Sure. Yeah.
So when you're talking to the retailers about the area, because the idea with the grocer in the food desert was not just to bring a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods
Sure.
or whatever, but to have a grocer go to a specific area of the city.
Right.
And how does that work? Because typically if a grocer is going to come to Palm Springs, they may say, well, downtown would be perfect for us.
Sure.
But if we say we want you to go to a food desert area, they may say, well, we're not really interested because demographically, according to all the data, it'd be better for them to be somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think that's the value of having psychographic data is not, sometimes demographic data is reinforcing some negative perception that may or may not be true of that particular area when we start looking at really how dollars are being spent and what that potential market share for that gap would be. An incentive might come into play. It just depends on where we are, and I'm not necessarily suggesting that it's going to be. It may be national, regional, maybe something different. So, but certainly the psychographic will take you to the next step. Instead of, if they're just looking at demographics and the demographics don't say exactly what they want it to say, they're going to pass on that opportunity. If you have more to say, if you can compel them in other ways. To really see that market. We've had so many clients, like Porterville is an example. I was just there last week. They were perceived as very blue collar, and for that reason, they got passed by a lot of retailers like Kohl's, like Panera Bread, and so we were able to show that really there was a market there for that, and really there was a customer there for that, and they've since been able to get a lot of stores where the initial demographically not that attractive. Compton is another one. The TGI Fridays that went there, their perception was the crime index was way too high and they would never go there. We showed 10 other locations across the country where the crime index was higher and that store overperformed. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to use some of this data to overcome some of that just initial draw, ring, 15 minutes, demographic, and the story's over.
And the scary part also, just as a locally small business, is that it seems to get like a big advantage to like people who can afford for all this data. I mean, it'd be great if the city had it and shared it. But
yeah, I agree, and that's
sort
why
of,
we developed that local retention tool, because we felt, wow, we're doing a lot of retention efforts for our national retailers, especially our franchisee concepts, where at the corporate level they're being given very little information. If they're liquid enough, they can open a store. That not a lot of support, and so we developed that tool so that our on-the-ground unique retail concept, somebody that maybe only has 3 stores or less, could leverage the same data that Target's using to do merchandise intelligence and marketing efforts.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really
great
really
presentation.
interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is the Business Retention Subcommittee report. Is there a staff report?
Yes. Thank you, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll go through this relatively quickly. I believe you had a preview of this report. This is something we wanted to put together just to keep track of all the initiatives we've been working on and keep us all accountable to the efforts that are going on. And you'll see briefly as we go to the first slide.
Are there copies?
Are there copies for the
Yeah,
public?
okay.
There's
If you don't have
copies back
copies, they're
there.
on the table. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Next slide, please. Like the presentations we just had, we do believe it's important that we're all educated as much as possible on the resources that are available to businesses that could help retain and grow and keep our economy going. Next slide. We have worked on a handful of business improvement assistance initiatives, such as the facade program, which we brought back. And by the way, the latest status report of this facade program is at the end of this presentation in your packet. And quickly, $125,000 of our $250,000 budget is in process, which has leveraged $174,000 from private businesses for total new investments in Palm Springs businesses of $313,000.
And Jay, can you just sort of share what outreach has happened to businesses and then sort of what the next phase of that looks like?
Right. Well, Kathy's at all the Main Street meetings, making sure everyone at Main Street knows about it. We mentioned a couple of meetings ago that the mailer we did was pretty effective. We haven't done email blasts, but that's on a slide that's coming up, thinking we should also promote what we're doing and the opportunities through as many channels as possible.
Great, thank you.
The hotel Phase 2 renovation project, and I did ask for another name for that, but it kind of just stayed. Council approved that, second reading, February 6th. There's been a lot of interest. We're going to talk about some of the additional interest that doesn't quite fit into this program later, so I'll just leave it at that. And actually, we'll also be talking about the next slide, vacant storefront program, which does help improve the appearance of the city, make it more attractive and inviting if we can have vacant storefronts look more appealing. Some of the other initiatives, I'm calling them initiatives because they're probably just one-off projects, are the food desert efforts we have, which, there's different options available to us to address the food desert issue. As we've just heard from Lisa, the retail attraction is, I think we heard probably the very best strategy that's available to us, grabbing the additional data and such to present to the retailers if that's the avenue we want to go down. We have also talked about mobile pantries, which Fine Food Bank has let me know that we're going to get together and talk about those possibilities. And even just adding additional shelf space at the local gas station to see if that's enough to help at least add a little more variety of nutritious foods in a neighborhood. Auto dealership retention, we do want to pay attention to our important businesses that generate revenue for the city. So we have been working with VIP Motors that is seeking additional space. Those are just ongoing discussions right now. One area we have not ventured very far into, but I think it's very important for the long-range development and growth of Palm Springs, are development financing programs. Things like opportunity zones, enhanced infrastructure financing districts, community revitalization investment authorities, and new market tax credits all have their own specific requirements. Some may fit, some may not fit. But we do have some assets to offer, such as our proximity to the freeways and rail and airport. sun and wind, bring down energy costs if they incorporate clean energy into their, into any projects that may happen in that, in the northern part of the town. And really just wrapping up, we do have some of these existing resources and incentives. These are things we do want to get out, push out more to the businesses, let them know these are available to them now. You know, one in particular, California Competes tax credits. When that first came out, it was a big push for manufacturers, job creation. I've seen the awards. You can go to the website when they meet and they show who's been awarded. It's plumbers, it's architects, it's accounting firms. There's a number of different opportunities for just about any business, it seems, to qualify for the California Competes tax credits. And along the lines of the marketing and promotions programs, uniquely Palm Springs has kicked off, and you know, it was an exciting kickoff. Ross Matthews there always brings a little excitement to the room. So that's something that really captures the unique nature of Palm Springs businesses, our brand, and helps to promote the small businesses in a unique way.
So Jay, just on that, just this sort of this current chance to win a gift runs through July 27th, but the program is indefinite, so that's created some confusion, so maybe we can just fix that on the slide, right? Put that up with the other one, in like parentheses. So with the offers a chance to win a gift, because there'll be more opportunities to win things. And,
Okay.
But it's not meant to end as far as the program. Our goal is to grow.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay,
make that
thanks.
clear. And as I touched on, we do want to expand the channels of disseminating this information. Also, we touched on a number of other topics that are in various stages, but we don't want them to drop off anywhere. We had discussed signage districts, parking strategies, charging stations, retail business attraction, and permit process improvements. So, you know, we'll count those as things we need to look at our upcoming meetings. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on any of that.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. This
It's
is
really
a
helpful.
great report and update about the work that we've done together over the past year. I actually think we've gotten a lot done here at the subcommittee, and it's really exciting. So thank you for the summary of everything that we've accomplished and what we still have to work on. Thank you.
Just going to ask, just so we have some direction on the grocery store. I wasn't certain if you wanted to recommend we go forward with the Buxton. It seemed to me that's the next logical step.
Yeah.
If we're
I think we need to probably take a look at what their proposal is, and then give feedback and talk to you and see what makes sense and what we really think they might be able to deliver.
Okay.
Yeah. But we should do that sooner rather than later.
So that would have to go to then this next subcommittee of this subcommittee then to make that recommendation, or it would go to the full council.
We need to go to full council.
Either way.
That level expenditure, you know, so obviously the budget subcommittee, the business retention subcommittee, so a couple probably would be important to weigh in, but I guess the question is, I'm trying to just make sure what the next steps we need to do, if any, on the grocery store possibility. And I think we've exhausted everything, but for this is the next step, or are there other things? I just want to be clear that we know what our game plan is to move the.
You know, this is it. If we have spoken to grocers, we've spoken to the grocers brokers. We need to be able to put some of this data in front of them that helps them to see a different story, that there are numerous visitors that come into the area. We did hear from the Aldi broker who said their store here was expected to do 700,000 monthly. It's doing $1 million. And there's something there that they didn't see that.
Which store was that?
The
Aldi.
new Aldi.
Right, and that's something we need to get out there more and provide that type of data for, so. It would be very helpful to have that.
Yeah, I think it would be. Thank you. I think next is hotel incentive program, and sort of what those things that don't fall within it are, and then we can discuss how we want to deal with them.
So we did just have approved the hotel renovation program, which was meant to work with existing hotels, have them be spruced up and contribute more to the visitor economy and have more investment in them by offering the TOT share. But there are hotels that don't have that TOT history. They are closed and they've been closed for a long time. And that's kind of created a problem for us because the way we structured the program was pretty much modeled after the previous program that had a 3-year history of TOT transactions. And so if there's no TOT transaction, that particular hotel, the increment used is greater and the share used is greater. And so is that fair? Is that even with the other program participants who have a higher base level and who are just getting this narrower band of hotel TOT share? So to address this, we could do arbitrary split of 50-50. We could say, well, or 25-75, because you have this huge advantage with lower, with no TOT history, perhaps, we pick a percentage and devise a program around that. We could reduce the number of years that the TOT is collected. And as we did with the other program, just approved, we can cap it at the investment level for that. We know investing in hotels like this would benefit the city. There's been some long-standing hotels. Some are historic. Some would be a great addition to get them back up operating. So we just wanted to bring this out and see what types of solutions we could come up with.
Okay. And so this, what we're talking about now would just be former hotels, right? Not former apartment buildings or...
Right, that's...
Not that we couldn't do that, but we're not looking at that at this point, so. So
how would that be defined?
Right, well, one before, right, there was something where Arrive is, I think, is that, no, there wasn't? That was
No,
just
Arrive is brand
new, there was just other buildings there.
The one example we have is Triada, which was a property that was under construction for about 20 years, closed,
Right here.
partly hotel, part condo.
Condos.
Triada took it on and the developer. And council, we took it to council separately. It was not in any specific program because they had zero TOT history. So the negotiation was 50% for 5 years, just a straight split of TOT. Now, their investment level, I'm sure was taken into consideration, was well above what their minimum requirement would have been. They will never recapture their investment under these terms.
Do we have a sense of how many developers have requested information about if they would fit into this program as a hotel that's not operating now? I know of one or two.
I think I know of one or two. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds about the same as I've heard. Right after the renovation program was approved, they were curious to know if they fit into that program, and we had to let them know, no, you did not. But, that there's opportunities for future programs, and we're discussing them now.
Yeah, and I think sort of what was done in that one instance is something that might make sense, which is, a lesser period of time, but these are generally many blighted, vacant former hotels. And I wouldn't want to do it for apartment buildings or others, but I could see, to turn into a hotel.
Right.
Say.
And Arrive was a brand-new hotel up out of the ground, so their deal, again, was outside of the ordinance time, the regular time. And so, again, council made a particular agreement.
Yeah, I think we're always better off having a standard uniform policy that's open to everyone than doing one-offs.
Right.
So if you're in agreement, I would just say maybe bring something back to our next meeting here if that's good, that's close to final, and then if you have something before then, we could sort of share it with some of the stakeholders and get some input on it, so that by our next meeting, we're ready to decide if we want to bring it to council.
Did you have anything to
Yeah,
add,
please.
David?
No, just, no,
Your brain is
Thinking,
going.
I'm thinking about it as well.
I see your brain going.
We talked about this a little bit, so
Yeah.
I think my position is clear. I do think we should open it up to hotels that have operated in the past. My brain is sort of spinning too, because we want to incentivize investment and we want to incentivize development. Do we want to incentivize only allowing them to be hotels versus housing or other things that we want?
No, I
So
think
that's
that's
what
a
my
separate-
brain is spinning about. We don't want to talk about apartment buildings or incentivize people to convert or anything like that. So,
Right. I mean, I think what we might want to talk about, and whether it's here or more in the Affordable Housing Subcommittee when that meets, same people, is former apartment buildings, incentivizing them to become apartment buildings again, because we desperately need rental and apartment housing.
Right.
Would be a really good thing. I just wouldn't want to, I wouldn't do it in this ordinance, because I don't necessarily want us to see apartments convert to hotels. If we can
Right.
incentivize them to renovate and open as apartments.
and that's the conversation
Right.
we had about the facade improvement program when apartments
Right.
had asked, is incentivizing investment into existing apartment buildings that are blighted. So
And if
that's
I-
a separate.
If I go, so for example, and this is sort of a twist, I got a call yesterday from a developer who wanted to buy a small hotel in the Warm Sands area, convert it to apartments, but then to use for vacation rentals, and wanted to know if, so, I don't think that was the intent of council, so, right, I suppose
No.
we have to be careful in the result.
Right, but I do think if we could put this on for the next Affordable Housing Subcommittee to really look at ways to, yeah, Dieter, you can come up if you have anything. Look at ways to incentivize, whether it's property tax rebates or whatever it may be, current apartment buildings that are not being utilized, to give them some economic incentive to become an apartment building again, and we need that rental housing. So I think it'd be a great thing. Dieter, and then we'll go, yeah.
I just had a quick
No,
question.
sure.
Is there any way that it would have to have, thank you, that it would have to have like solar, or we could build that into any new hotels? And I just think it's like a no-brainer.
It would be separate and apart from this.
Right.
I mean, we do make some requirements in this program, so people have to do prevailing wage, things like that. It's an interesting idea. I think we can look at it.
Thank you.
I said it's a separate issue because we did a residential solar mandate,
Right.
and I think the next step would be looking at commercial.
Commercial, how we do that.
I think commercial would be
Yeah.
I
No,
agree.
and it really helps, obviously. Yeah, the utility costs.
Just on the topic of hotels and apartments, I know there's a lot of daily, monthly, weeklies. I don't know if they're considered boutique hotels and things of that nature, and they seem to always kind of be vacant. I know the Bahama Hotel is currently undergoing a renovation,
Right.
and then there's projects like the next to Toucans, what is that, Stonewall Gardens,
Yeah.
that used to be former apartments, and now it's an assisted living.
Right.
So those are the kind of projects that I'm thinking of, some of those old buildings there, the Tramway Inn that have been vacant for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think we,
Go ahead.
I was saying, we could also look in the Affordable Housing Subcommittee at what incentives we might give to these closed hotels to become rental housing, right? Because that would be attractive as well.
Did you have something to add?
No, okay, thank you.
I think it's a great point.
Yeah.
We need to look at it, both
Right.
of those angles.
Would you like us to include some kind of a incentive bump for historic properties in the same way we did with the last renovation project?
Yes, and it makes sense because it's more expensive for them to renovate, and, those things, if they fall into disrepair, end up getting bulldozed down the road, and we don't want to see that happen.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
So,
The next item is vacant storefronts, and I only have about 10 more minutes, and I have to leave. I have a hard deadline,
Okay.
so.
Well, for the sake of time, I think we don't need to do the slideshow on this one, it's in everyone's packets. Actually, the vacant storefronts program is included in our vacant building ordinance, which is why you have all that information in front of you. So, as we've talked in this subcommittee quite a bit as to the alternatives, can it be pop-up art gallery, pop-up retail, just bring some design use into there to promote it? Is that something we would want to do to the ordinance to update it and change it from what it currently has, or maybe add to what it currently has, which is a historic and cultural requirement that that any type of added visuals to a vacant building have a historic or cultural context to them. And that brings us to pretty much.
Just for some context,
Sure.
we haven't done this in the art in the storefront. So that was a program that has sunset. So
Okay.
Yeah, we just wanted you to know that. That's what we did.
We had done in the past.
right. So the question is, do we want to reconstitute it?
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's so many vacancies that you need to update the program? Like what would you say is our vacancy rate right now? I think it's pretty low.
Right, and
Right.
we did this when there was a much higher.
Yes.
Like
So-
the Fashion Plaza, the whole
Yeah.
fashion, whole block.
So I guess that's the threshold question, if you think it's even necessary, because it is very sort of labor intensive to get all these moving parts together in each. So I guess the first question is if it's something you think that's needed.
Well, let me chime in here. One thing I did notice that some of the more noticeable vacancies are larger footprint buildings. Maybe part of the effort is some type of incentive to subdivide the buildings to make them easier to lease out and get them down to the size of, a smaller shop or restaurant that someone can take out space in.
Interesting.
It'll depend on the property. Parking would have to be subdivided
Yeah.
and such, so, yeah.
I guess it would be good sense to have what the vacancy rate in sort of commercial space, not just in the central business district, but throughout the city, because there are some areas, I think, that are more vacancies than others, and.
Right.
Right, and that's where we've gotten some complaints. We haven't really gotten them
Okay.
much in the downtown or uptown.
I've run various vacancy report scenarios. I've done corridors, like just from Vistachino to Alejo. I think today that was at 1.6.
Yeah, that's really low.
Actually, today I did one from Indian Avenue going out 5 miles. I know that's not cool, Lisa, but radius-wise. But anyway, that, even taking a little bit of Cathedral City, I actually narrowed it to about 4.8 or 5. Anyway, that was 3.6. And that was retail, flex space. I didn't do office. It's a different animal, but.
And isn't the national average is way higher than that? And certainly El Paseo is way higher than that, if I might just mention that, too.
Of course you may.
Actually, I
Thank you.
El Paseo, that's in Palm Desert, that's a
I
Bucks
think so.
incline,
I
isn't
haven't
it?
gone there, but I heard about it. People have talked about it, but they
Right.
tell me the vacancy rate and the,
Well, and I can tell you, a healthy vacancy rate is considered 5%.
Yeah.
There's
No.
gotta be room for people to move around and.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of this was also a conversation about allowing pop-ups and sort of unique uses, because we do have a number of property owners who just hold empty space and there's no incentive for them, and they charge extremely high rates because they own so much property that doesn't matter to them, and so they don't have an incentive to lease them out at cheaper rates. So some of that was just how can we incentivize those property owners to use their spaces and allow pop-ups or allow other uses.
can't they do that now, though? What would stop them from having a pop-up in their vacant space? Isn't that just bringing a tenant into your space? I don't understand the concept, I'm sorry.
Yes, but if as San Francisco's looking at others, there are fines for keeping your property vacant for a certain amount of time, that might incentivize them to put in a pop-up. They can do it now, but if there's a cost to not having anyone in there, then they might do that. And that's beneficial, obviously, for everyone if something goes in. So
I mean-
it's sort of that way as opposed to.
They're not
They
doing
can't.
it now,
Right.
so,
How do we get them to do it?
you know, and that would be
So
interesting.
carrot and stick.
So we're looking at the vacancy rate, but it's also like what number of units have just been remained vacant for years and years or for a very long time. And, you know, maybe it's talking to those property owners about what they would need. But I think we've talked about streamlined processing for pop-up shops so that they could easily get assembled, things like that the city could do. Other, you know, you've heard our list of just our toolbox of sort of economic development. So I think that's all on the table. So for this, I don't know if we're ready to move forward on this or just
No.
keep it on the
But
agenda.
if folks have ideas, email them to us. We'll share them with staff, and at the next meeting, we'll bring all the ideas back. And I think that'll be a good way to try and get something moving forward. And if Main Street has some ideas, one of us can come to a meeting and just brainstorm as well.
Kathy's there too,
Yeah.
at
Okay,
all the
great.
meetings.
Perfect.
And Jay at most,
Okay.
unless he's sick.
Staff reports.
So the next thing is sort of the town hall event. So it's almost a year from when we did that big town hall event. And we're trying to think, does it make sense to do one sort of in May, or should we wait till September and spend some time getting ideas for the kind of things we want at that town hall? So we wanted to sort of get input from sort of folks who come here and get some thoughts for timing of it, because we want it to be as productive as possible.
I like these meetings.
Yeah.
They're very productive. We try to encourage more people to come because really they're fabulous meetings. I appreciate it very much.
So how are these noticed? These meetings noticed? Because at this point, I know there's an official notice from the
Right.
city, but where does that all go?
The website.
Right.
Well, and individuals can sign up for being notified for specific subcommittee meetings and commissions and such, and so those go out then. It's on the website.
So Joy could advertise it.
Oh, I could.
Yeah.
I do. We had the wrong time though, because the
No,
time
we're gonna
changed
talk- that's
after
next.
I put it out. The time was
Yeah.
different on it.
But was there something sent out this time, Jay? Because I didn't see anything. I didn't get an email
Could
or
you
no
use your mic, please? We're
Oh,
recording.
I'm sorry. I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Was there anything on this time?
Sent out, not specifically sent out, but put onto the city's website, which triggers the notification.
'cause I
So,
didn't get
but you
the
have
link.
to be signed up on the
So we can
notification.
go to social media platforms,
Yeah.
in Joy's
And let's see-
downtown.
Let's see if, all the business organizations, let's reach out to send to their lists as well. You, Mike, Troy.
Was it on Nextdoor?
We don't
We
typically
think
post
so.
notices
It's a
on
little more
Nextdoor.
neighborhoody.
It's-
Residential in that, although there are businesses as
Yeah.
well. But, yeah, I mean, I'll put it out whenever this meeting's
And we'll do
coming
that
up.
too. We'll start that too. I'll put it on TPA. I'll do
Yeah.
it with Arenas and see
So we
what
should, we can do more outreach on it, I think
We
would be
should
good.
have at least twice as many people
Yeah.
here
I agree.
with the opportunities.
And maybe, okay.
I know that the time did change, is that correct? I thought that I just wrote it down wrong. And
No, it
fortunately,
did
I just sent Joy a text to confirm that it started at 5:30, and I had several people actually on my block that wanted to come, but couldn't because they thought it started at 5:30 and their stores are
Right.
open, or they
Yeah.
didn't know.
So let's go to the next item.
Well,
but-
one more thing on
oh,
this, so
mhm.
just to finish this one up, because that is why we want to talk about the start time.
Yeah.
For the town hall, maybe we make in May, let's give a chunk of time to planning an agenda for a town hall, and then we'll pick a date maybe in the fall, but I really want to get a lot of input and thought, so we do the town hall isn't just this in a different room, but, you know, something where we're going to bring some key presentations that people really want, and that, you know, have some other things more than just this, now that we do this, every other month.
Well, on that, a little bit on that too, is not then July, I know there's staff and I know August council's dark
Right.
and all, but isn't maybe July when there is a little bit less traffic, not an opportunity for, at least for a smaller one that brings people in? I don't know. It's,
Uh-huh.
things aren't just busy, I don't know if, if there's more opportunity in the middle of July than it is in the middle of the season, in February.
We're open. I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah,
based
so
on the
let's talk about that in
community
May
and
get some input if we do it in July or September or what the best
We're gonna do it inside, right?
time
In
is.
the park,
Yes,
so.
it will be air conditioned,
Yeah.
so maybe that will be a draw
Yeah.
for folks. Okay, so time of meeting, and that was the question really for the businesses is, what is the best time to do this? We know we don't want to do it on Thursdays. And, so what's the best time for our, various businesses?
Well, I could tell you that 5 o'clock is very hard for Village
Okay.
Fest before this, because today
That
we
we
had
know.
a short agenda, but sometimes it's.
And we can move to a different day than the Village Fest day if 5 is a good time for folks. If we need to move it to 6,
5:30?
if 6 is better, we can do 6. So, yeah.
It's a conflict for me. Five is probably better because I deal with dinner. But
Right.
for
That's
retail,
what I heard
I
from
would
folks.
imagine 5:30 would be better.
There's
But
some retail.
a lot of the people on my block are open until 10, the retailers
Right.
too. So I don't know.
I think 5's perfect. I mean, if you keep on changing things, it gets very confusing.
It was 4.
No, then people have to leave work though, and that's really what the problem is.
But they're leaving work anyway. I mean, they're like, Mindy has got her 5:30, she's there at 2 or noon or.
I think 4 gets more
I-
trouble for the, folks in sort of not retail and people who are working in law firms or, CPAs who want to think about how they might expand, or we've had some of those conversations. So 5 may be easier for them. That's the reasoning.
Put them all on the table.
Right.
I would imagine 5:30 would be better.
I really like it on Tuesdays too, because that's kind of my
'Cause
city
you're here?
day. Well, it's my city day of, right, we got our village, our Main Street stuff too, so.
So why don't we,
it would
let's
be
do this. At the next Main Street meeting, can you take a little poll of what folks think and report back to us? And that'll be really helpful,
Absolutely.
and we'll do the same.
Got it.
See if the chamber will send something out. If you can send something out, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the one reason we did talk about this was you mentioned Village Fest. They meet so every other month, we run into this kind of crunch time frame for Village Fest. So far, it's not been too much of a problem, except for today.
Would
A little
5:30
bit.
always solve
It
the
was
Village Fest?
5:30 before.
Right.
So for 5 o'clock today, Jasmine could prepare a shorter agenda as well
When
on
we know.
those weeks.
Yeah.
They make the agenda and
Okay.
stuff,
Right.
so we could deal with things that are more complicated on the other meeting. It's only once every other month,
Right.
so.
Exactly. Okay, great. So that is it. Thank you, everyone, for coming and hanging in for the whole thing.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
George, for the press release.